back in the day when Herpa had a pretty good run at making decent aircraft models and Air Berlin was alive and kicking, although laying the seeds for its later downfall, Herpa produced this aircraft model. What it has to offer and why it might still be worth our time today, we'll find out after the drop. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Airbus A320-200 of Air Berlin. At the front of the box we have a lovely image of the aircraft in real life, underneath which we find the old Air Berlin branding. On the backside of the box we then have the same image once more. We are offered the original dimensions of the aircraft as well as some additional information. A basic box design and miles ahead of anything that Herpa offers us today. And here she is, the Airbus A320-200 in one of the former standard liveries of Air Berlin. The aircraft model itself was produced by Herpa Wings between 2006 and 2007 over 2 production batches, with the models however being completely identical. Now since that time we have obviously seen quite a few Air Berlin aircraft models, so you might rightly ask, well, why should I waste my time with this aircraft model? But I would argue there are still some things that this aircraft model actually does better than any current Herpa Wings release, and what these things are we will take a look at throughout this review. So as always, we start our tour around the aircraft model with a look at the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the old Air Berlin branding. On the fuselage, we then find the full registration code of the aircraft as well as the German flag, and towards the very tail of the aircraft we do also have a bit of detailing around the APU exhaust. At the front of the aircraft and across the fuselage we then have the writing of Air Berlin, and underneath that we have the airberlin.com branding. Of course the aircraft does not have a One World logo, of which Air Berlin became a member, but at that time Air Berlin was still independent in regards to affiliation with any airline alliance. When we focus on the cockpit section we will notice that we have the cockpit windows printed on, but no other printed details have been added here. That is, even for today's standards, rather bare-boned. But what I think is worth noting here is actually the shape of the mold around the cockpit section. Sure, it is in my opinion still a little bit too, well, bulky, but it is still much closer resembling the look of an A320 than today's mold from Herpa Wings. If we then take a quick look at the engines, we can see we have the silver leading edge printed on, and the nacelles have been given the color scheme that we also find on the fuselage, but no other printed details have been added here. The physical detailing of the engines overall is actually also pretty decent, and I would actually say that the engines of course look better today from Herpa Wings, however the engines we see here are not far off. On the fuselage then, above the wings, we find the emergency exits have been printed on, which leads us straight to the wings. And if we look here at the top side, we can see the different flap slats and spoilers have been carved out rather nicely, and we have some different shades of grey for additional detailing, but no markings for the emergency exits. The underside of the wings offers us some more physical detailing, although with more recent Herpa Wings releases that does look a little bit better. The same thing goes for the wingtip fences that are more pronounced in more recent releases. However, I would say Herpa has done a great job in actually adding some print to these tiny wingtip fences. If we then move on to the landing gear, we can see that is the standard landing gear that Herpa used at the time for their Airbus A320s, and that is a good thing because it looks, in my opinion, way better. And although it is much more fragile and is also missing some printed details around the front landing gear, it just overall looks way more realistic than anything we get from Herpa Wings today. And then last but not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A320-200 in a former standard livery of Air Berlin from Herpa Wings in scale 1 to 500, and what can we say about this aircraft model? Of course, when I'm talking about this aircraft model having something to offer today, I don't particularly mean that it is much better than a model from Herpa Wings today, but there are some parts which it definitely does much better. When I'm talking about the mold specifically, obviously I'm not talking about the entire mold. For example, the way the wings have been mounted into the mold here, well, Herpa does much nicer today. But when we talk about the mold, in particularly around the cockpit section, this does just look so much better than anything we get from Herpa Wings today. It is not perfect. There are better molds from Herpa Wings regarding the cockpit, but it is still better than what we get from Herpa Wings today, and that is the main point I have to make here. The same thing goes actually for the landing gear. The landing gear is so far beyond what Herpa does today. This is actually true to scale, unlike what we get today, which looks more like a toy. When we look at the print quality of this aircraft model, well, it is just as good as anything we would get from Herpa Wings today. The only difference is really that we have a few more details on today's releases. However, the difference is really not that big. However, the base price since this model has been released to today has pretty much tripled, which is staggering. So if you are interested in aviation history, and particularly in the history of Air Berlin, then this is a pretty good model to go for, because it won't cost that much, and it is, honestly speaking, still a pretty good model. So with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, then don't forget to leave a like. That would be very much appreciated. And of course, if you are new around here, why not hit subscribe? That would be absolutely awesome. With that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.